Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the ABH number 2600. This is a floor-mounted electromagnetic door holder, is what it is. Here's what the business end looks like when it comes out of the box. It has a rubber gasket down below, and it has 4 wires coming out of it, which we're going to discover why there are 4 wires and what they're connected to. We'll take that apart and take a look at it. And if you know about ABH wiring, it's a common and then 12, 24, and 120 volts, so there'd be 4 wires. So let's take a look and see in just a moment. So this is the floor portion, and this is going to be, of course, an electromagnetic door holder that is used when you need to hold a door open. There are different types of these, or variations, really. The electromagnet that's in here is the same concept in all of them. What really changes is the housing around them and where they're installed. On a floor, mostly on a wall. Surface mount, semi-recess, fully recessed into a wall. And single floor units, double floor units, where there's a magnet sticking on this side for those types of applications. You're also going to have the armature as well. This is the door portion. Okay, and obviously this will get mounted down near the floor. There you go. So simple and straightforward. You're going to get included with the unit a 1-inch extension and what would be basically a box wrench for installing that onto your armature. Let's just talk about that right now. So what happens is the wrench can fit right here. Okay, and once I've got that, I can loosen that. And then into here, I can insert my extension. Okay, and then I can thread my plate back on, and now I have a longer length. Suffice it to say, there are loads of different extension possibilities when it comes to length, of course, and we'll discover those. And also, there's one with an elbow, and then there's a type, the S220 from ABH, where you can simply define the length that you need. If you need 9-inch, you're not going to stack a mess of these together. You could, but that would be that would certainly not be the least elegant and least expensive way to go. You're also, for that armature, you're going to get more screws in this bag than will be necessary. All that you're going to need out of this bag will be and this package it does include anchors that will be appropriate for other mounts that are surface mounted. So out of here, you'll just need these sex bolts to bolt that through the door, through those 2 holes. Okay, these other screws that are here would be appropriate for attaching your let's see here now. In a surface-mounted wall application, you'll need 2 screws to hold the electromagnet onto the back of the trim plate, and then the entire trim plate onto the surface box. Is where you'd use those machine screws. So they won't be used in this application at all. So the only thing left in the package would be a package full of floor anchors. These appear to be 3/8 hex bolt, lag bolts, hex head lag bolts, and then expansion anchors for a masonry application. If you need to do something else, you may need to, depending on what the application is. You might need to alter those a little bit, what you're going to use there. Now, let's take a look at what is inside of this box. A couple of Allen bolts are holding the unit together. I have already checked, and I know that the size of the wrench used for this is this size. I just don't see on here where it's indicated what size that is. I can tell you what size it is, though. Oh, it does say. I think it says 3/16. Let's check it out with the caliper. Yep, definitely. Certainly 3/16 of an inch, Allen wrench. So we're going to get that in there. I'm going to put this down while I unthread these bolts. I'd like to see, quite frankly, why they have all of the, why they have 4 wires coming out of there. I would expect that They should just pack too loose would be what I would think. Would be my opinion on how to do that. Okay. Yeah, okay, so that loosens that from the floor plate. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull these wires, uncoil them. 2 bolts. Just going to unpack these wires from each other. Okay. I'm going to pull that rubber gasket off. The floor plate's going to come out. Yeah, and they've run all wires to that unit, and there's just 2 screws holding that on. So I would really like to get a closer look at that to show you what you ought to expect. So let me grab a screwdriver. Okay, fast forward into the future a little bit. Screwdriver, we're just going to remove those 2 screws because there's no reason to remove those. But I would like for you to see what's on the back of this unit. And this is going to run on 12 volt DC. I think it'll go 24A or DC, and then 120V AC. So I've got those 2 screws removed. I think it'll come out. Yeah, sure. So there's just a rubber gasket here, so I'm going to push on that rubber gasket a little bit. It should come out. Obviously, they don't plan on that coming out too easily. Aha, got it. There's a rubber gasket on the outside of the unit, so I'm going to pull that off. Some adhesive actually that is holding that on. So well, no, it's not adhesive. It's just pressure fit inside of the aluminum housing is all it is. Well, maybe there is a touch of adhesive there. We'll be able to mimic that when we put it back together. Okay, so that gasket just came out. A little bit of, a couple of drops of adhesive holding that in there. I'll put some back in there when we put it back together. But here's what we're looking at. Here's the electromag. And obviously that's why they run 4 wires to it, because they don't want you in there, you know, needing to alter or needing to wire this. So they pre-run those. But you can see what we're dealing with here. Now what you can't see very elegantly is what's underneath the wires, because we're not focusing on it very well. The camera isn't. That's 120 volt. That's common. That's 24 volt. That's 12 volt. Okay, and that's, so you need a common, obviously, no matter what. And then you need the line that's going to be your wiring. So according to the table or the matrix on the back, see if we can get the camera to focus on that a little bit better. Let's try that one more time. Not really. So volt along the left side is the column 12, 24, 120. The next column is DC, and that shows the quantity of milliamps. As the volts go up, the amps go down. So you've got either 60 or 30 milliamps. The next column is AC, so you can run this 24 AC or 24 DC. 30 milliamps in either case. And then 120 volt will be at 30 amps. Okay. Term is that column, so they're telling you common and whatever the line voltage is. So that's what that's for. So that's, you know, They run 4 wires because they obviously don't want you pulling that out. So now we'll just reassemble this magnet back into the housing. Place that through there. We'll run the 2 screws back in to hold it in place, and then we'll pack the gasket back in. It's nice to have a magnetic tip screwdriver for doing some of this work. Now the name ABH is quite synonymous with electromagnetic door holders. They have a complement of this material, and of course they have the types that you're going to require. Your wall, your variations of wall, and obviously your variations of floor mount. They're always what is called tri-packed in the sense that the units are capable of handling any voltage that you're going to throw to them, except, 240. So that's how that's going to work. So it's nice because whatever you bring to it, provided it's not, 8 volts AC, you're ready to go out of the package. Okay, we've got that packed together pretty well. Units put back together. Now you know what's inside, so we'll run these wires back through our floor plate. But first, so what's happening here is this is where the 2 Allen bolts are coming through, and they thread obviously into the floor plate here. And then that floor plate's going to sit down, obviously into there. You're going to anchor that floor plate down. So it looks like they've got 4 holes and 4 anchors. That makes sense there. So that those 2 bolts, those 2 Allen bolts, will certainly come out to accommodate the fact that you've got to get the floor plate down. Run that plate back down to where it belongs. And then our gasket. Now you're going to very often see these units, electromagnetic units installed in hospitals, and the reason is because they are, while they're incredibly old technology, they are a very elegant way to hold doors open. But you don't often see units mounted into the floor, so that's pretty uncommon, and it's because they don't want to pierce into the floor at all, because that becomes a trap for the growth of mildew, fungus, things of that nature. Okay, we've got that through there. So wall units are very common. Surface mount, recess mount are all very common in that realm. Okay, we've got that threaded back together, I believe. Yeah, we do. So we're good. We'll just pack that wire assembly back together. This is going to a client on the east coast of Florida, to a church. They need to hold some doors open, but they need to do so in a code compliant way, obviously, because they are fire doors, and these will all be tied back to their fire panel, and that will tell those doors to close. So we've done a forensic review basically of the hardware itself. Let's switch now to the screen view, and let's take a closer look at the supporting documentation. So let's do that now. Okay, so here's the item that we're looking at here, and we're going to get into some extended description details of the item. Used on fire smoke barrier doors. It's a hold open unit, and will behave as such until it's released by a remote switching device, fire alarm panel basically. Can be used to just hold the door. Tri-volt, we discussed the voltages previously. 30 to 45 pound holding power, that's important to know. People want to know how many pounds of force it requires to pull that off. Whether it be needing to be sure someone can pull it off, or needing to be sure that it cannot be unintentionally pulled off. But knowing what the holding power is important. Easy wire installation with quick insert connector. That's got to be talking about the electromagnet itself. Stainless steel faceplate is available. ABH does a lot of things in stainless steel. This one we're talking about here is US 28. Armature is through bolted for security and can be provided with any projection required. That's by means of extensions. Armature extensions available for unlimited projections, along with a 120-degree swivel extension. Armature design will compensate for centerline misalignment up to a 1/4 inch with double swivel and pivoting ball. That's a reference to this, the fact that the plate that actually contacts the electromagnet can pivot along a ball joint that's in here. UL and ULC listed. Low current design, certainly. Little graphic there of what the dimensions are. We'll go over the dimensions at the end of the video. A cross-reference chart, we're going to look at that a little bit closer, along with extensions. This gives an idea of what extensions are, but it's not nearly all of them. We'll look at all of them in a moment. The S220 is the custom arrangement that I had mentioned earlier. Any length is necessary. We've done them in 18-inch, things of that nature. It all boils down to the configuration of what the door and frame and wall are. You know, this client, before we determined that we could put a unit on the floor in his application, we were looking at doing, you know, an 18-inch extension where this we had basically a parallel wall to the door. We were going to mount that on the parallel wall. When the door comes open at 90 degree, we'd have to dissect that with a 90 degree extension, so it would have looked fairly like this. But he was able to convert that to a floor mount, saving the substantial additional cost of the extension, and the fact that holding it open at 90 degree ought to have worked, you know, meaning the pounds of force on the door closer probably would not have pulled it off the wall, and we were fairly confident that it wouldn't, but you never know. Now, there are links down below this video. The first is to the cut sheet. That's going to show you the 2600, and this is where we'll touch on just looking at the dimensional properties. The extended description information we've basically gone over, and 35 pounds of holding force. Provided with that one complementary 1-inch extension. Optional extensions are available. Then there's a link to the template, and the template is a 2-page affair that's going to show us where this unit needs to mount. Armature, the idea of where it mounts, the assembly of what the floor portion looks like, the electrical characteristics which are on the back of the electromagnet, which we've gone over. Although yeah, that makes sense. Although I think it was 60 on the back of the electromag. I think the milliamps were 60 for this value and 30 for this value, if I recall correctly. Anyway, it's most definitely important to know how many milliamps these draw, but you know, 12 milliamps is probably not going to corrupt your circuit based on how much power you're running to it. Shows the wiring. You're only going to need 2, so you're going to have to, you know, probably terminate or remove those unneeded wires from the electromagnet. A bill of materials of the fasteners that are included are here. Now, where to place the item? Find the following: pivot point of door, okay, the door width, maximum degree of door opening permitted by the door opener. You're going to want to make sure that the door closer will permit the door to get to the place where you can locate the item. Determine arc length by subtracting 5 5/8 from width of door. Okay, so the door width minus 5 5/8 is what they call arc length. For example, 36 minus 5 5/8 is 30 3/8 arc length. That will come important coming up here. Determine degree of desired door opening with consideration for partition, meaning, you know, determine where you're going to want the door held open. Allow 6-inch clearance around conduit and any partition for the 2600 series. Conduit should be located on the arc and 4 1/8 from pull side of door. Okay. So what they're saying is this is the path of the door. Arc length is important to know because it gives you the positioning of where the unit needs to be mounted on the floor according to the arc length. So door width minus 5 5/8 is the arc length. The door and the holder must be perpendicular to each other. Allow 4 1/8 inch from the face of the door, according to this, to the conduit, and that will allow half of the body dimension along with the door armature to be installed. That makes sense. I'm going to put my tape measure on here. 4 1/8. Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I have my tape measure from the center of the body with the armature door plate. Yeah, that's exactly correct. So it is confirmed it's the center of the unit with the armature installed will get you to the face of the door. Conduit should be located on the arc, meaning the floor unit must be located on the arc when the door is at the maximum degree of door opening. Floor magnet installation, that's just the physical process of installing it down to the floor. Locate magnet assembly on pull side of door near bottom rail, approximately 6 inch from the lock edge. We've already discussed it'll be along the arc length. Using marked locations, drill mounting holes in the floor for the 5/8 floor anchors. Mount the gasket and magnet base to floor using those anchors. Consult electrical data on page 1 for wiring it. And then the armature. That's basically going to be in the proper location given the floor placement of the electromagnet, and then it'll be through bolted through the door. And you can read that, but it's simple and straightforward how to install that. After that, we have a cross-reference. So if you are looking to convert this part number to or from another major manufacturer, obviously Rixson is a name that I think of all the time with electromagnetic door holders. So their 2600 would convert to the FM 980. Then there's the product brochure, and this 10 or 11 pages will allow you to see an overview of all of the different units. Okay, an overview of the wiring that's here. And basically shows, you know, this is going to go back to the fire alarm that will power them. That circuit would be normally open so that when power is cut, that circuit will open and drop power to these units, obviously allowing the doors to no longer be held on the armature and the electromagnet, and therefore the automatic closing device will take over. Then they'll get into the different styles, wall mount types of different varieties. They call this a recessed mount. You know, it's surface mounted in the sense that it projects off the face of the wall, but it would be a semi-recess where you've got some of it inside and some of it outside. Surface mount completely. The same client bought 4 of the 2300s. Then you have what they call flush mount. There's also a flush mount with a lower profile armature that's going to be 3/4 inch shorter. So if you're really confined for space, you can go with the L version of the 2400 flush mount. 2400 LS is a flush mount with an even shorter armature, 3/8 of an inch. And then a high holding force wall unit here. This takes 300 pounds to pull that off, so that'll be someone who's quite determined to pull that off the door, or a couple of determined people. And you'll see that in applications where you do not want or cannot permit the casual pulling of the door off the unit, off the wall, really. Your single floor mount we're talking about here, and then the same floor mount with magnets on either side, an overview of those 3 armatures, an overview of the different bases, pardon me, an overview of the different extensions, and then the S220, which will allow you to create a unit as required based on the dimension. Now, finally, there's a link below this video here to the manufacturer's page that will allow you to review not only all of the ABH products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the current product catalog. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, the name ABH has been a manufacturer of hardware for just about 30 years now. I do recall the day that the person who started ABH, who I believe is still in charge, came into the shop and gave us his background and his story and what he was doing and asked for our business. And if I recall correctly, their selling point really was going to be local, was going to be quick lead times, high quality, high value, really great prices, a confluence of all of those things. And they've maintained that pretty much to this day. When it comes to lead times in hardware in general, overall in the industry, their lead times are at the edge of the shortest lead times when it comes to shipping material out. Every manufacturer needs a lead time. It's a function of profitability. But ABH does a great job at relatively quick turnaround on material. Occasionally, if there's a finish that they have to farm out to someone who does the finish, the lead time is going to be there because they're depending on someone else. But much of what they sell is on a pretty quick lead time. Overhead stops and holders, obviously electromagnetic door holders, pivots. If you're looking for pivots, center hung, offset, all of the varieties, they manufacture practically every pivot that you might need, and you'll want to take a very close look at their pivot line and compare it against others. And I think what you'll find is an uncanny resemblance to other pivots, but an uncanny intelligent pricing structure as well, where you've got a price that's less, you've got an all but identical pivot, and you've got a phenomenal lead time. So while sometimes their pivots are going to not be stocked and need to be produced, the cost savings and the quality of it being utterly on par does make me want to suggest that you would just simply plan ahead when it comes to getting their pivots. Just a moderate, quite modest lead time. Really nice quality material from them. But that full-line catalog on the manufacturer's page will allow you to look at everything. They're constantly evolving their product line. Recently, they're doing decorative pivots as well, material made of solid stainless or even brass. Much smaller sorts of pivots, but stuff that you'll see in wardrobe door applications, maybe large furniture applications. And of course, aluminum continuous geared hinges, and many other items. So, if you have any questions on the ABH 2600 floor-mounted electromagnetic door holder or any other ABH product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. If you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please click subscribe as well, and even share the video with someone that you know. And if you have any questions for a future video, please send them our way, and we will make every attempt to oblige. And thank you very much.